Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, a post-game pod from, we'll call it the last preseason game. The Timberwolves, at least the last game their starters were going to play in. Some exciting takeaways from this game against the Bulls. Rotation guys played significant minutes and a little more data on an offense that has struggled thus far in the preseason. We'll break down what happened next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy weekend. And I guess it's also a game day. Today is technically the preseason finale, but very unlikely that any actual rotation players are going to play on the second night of a back-to-back in the preseason. The Wolves played the Bulls last night in Chicago, and obviously the result is pretty irrelevant when it comes to preseason games. The Timberwolves did lose by 6, but we got to see the full rotation minus Reid and some more data on an offense that has struggled thus far in the preseason. We'll talk a bit about that, but also some encouraging signs. The bench, TJ Shannon, Rob Dillingham played well. And I think there's some actual takeaways there. So we'll treat this kind of like a regular post-game pod with key takeaways here off the top. We'll get into studs and duds a little bit later, and that's what we'll do here today on the show. First of all, though, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. All right, so as mentioned, the Timberwolves played everybody except Reid. I think the team called it bumps and bruises for just giving him a day of rest. Maybe that means he plays Friday if they just wanted him to have a consecutive day of rest, maybe knock a little bit of rust off on Friday before he plays next week. My guess is none of the top 8 play on Friday. Maybe we'll probably see Rob Dillingham, and at this point, I guess he'd be number 9 on the depth chart. You might see TJ Shannon on Friday, but it's going to be another young man's game. As of this recording, the Timberwolves have not released anybody, so all those training camp guys that are likely to end up in Iowa will play. Also, Joe Ingles didn't play Thursday. He's been injured. He had the groin strain, and he was cleared prior to the game on Thursday and did not play. So it's a chance he plays Friday to just get him a little bit of run here. Remember, he played in the first preseason game and hasn't played since, had the groin strain. So we'll see if he does play on Friday. Let's see what else. At least in terms of the setup, the Timberwolves tried to treat this as something of a dress rehearsal for the regular season, and it didn't go great for the starters, but I thought it went really well for the bench. Minnesota was actually up by 5 at the end of the first quarter. They were down at halftime, and they had a big third quarter, and then lost the lead again in the fourth, and ultimately lost. But the Timberwolves did get out to a lead early, and it wasn't because the starters were playing well. The offense was clunky. It was slow. The only way that they were really scoring was good individual efforts by Jaden McDaniels, who only finished with 4 points, but he scored a couple buckets early and was active, and I thought he was part of the offense, a big part of the offense that was not really functioning. And then Julius Randle. Julius Randle was probably the best player on the floor for the Wolves in this game. He played just 27 minutes. But he had 23 points on 18 shots, 8 boards, 4 assists. He did have 3 turnovers, but he handled the ball a lot. He was playing bully ball. He was being aggressive. I thought he was being somewhat surprisingly aggressive on defense and on the glass for a preseason game. But he was really kind of the engine of the Timberwolves in the first quarter. It got up a lot of shots, which we've seen a lot of this preseason, and it hasn't been very efficient. He's had a lot of – it seems like he's just a little bit off, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a bit, but I thought the way the game started was more about the Bulls' complete dysfunction. The Wolves' defensive activity, I thought they were active on the glass too, but the Wolves were not playing well offensively. It was just individual efforts, those buckets by McDaniels very early, Julius Randle, his activity, him playing bully ball, a lot of attempts at lobs to Rudy Gobert throughout this game. He ended up with 12 field goal attempts in this game, and of course that doesn't include, a Dante DiVincenzo missed lob that sailed into the stands. A couple that Rudy just kind of muffed before he actually had the opportunity to dunk. There was one that he just completely tried to throw down without touching the rim and completely missed it short, which is never great. And I mean, that obviously goes down as a field goal attempt, but not all of those missed connections did. So he was 7-12 shooting, and there was what seemed to be a concerted effort to get the ball to Rudy, both in his first stint and then when he came back in the game later with that first unit. And I think that's a good thing. Obviously, we saw that pay dividends against the Lakers last year in the first round when he had 24 or whatever it was in that game against a really small Lakers team. As a general rule, you're not going to run your offense through Rudy. Everyone knows that. But I think depending on the opponent and how they're playing defensively, you can try and force the issue a little bit there because the gravity of Rudy Gobert could open some other stuff up. And I also think it's been good to see Ant be more than willing to throw those lobs. I think Rudy only converted one lob from Ant. There was another that he just missed, and then he tapped in, which of course means Ant doesn't get the assist, but it generated a great shot for the offense. And so hopefully Ant, I think he's I think his basketball IQ is high enough to understand that, hey, that was still a positive play, even if he missed the initial pass or didn't convert off the initial pass, but it took the offensive rebound to score. Um, I, I think that's a viable offensive strategy to keep Rudy involved, depending on the opponent. Now, some nights Rudy just doesn't have it as a lob threat, and we'll see. Maybe as the year goes on, he gets, his legs get banged up, etc. But I thought that was a pretty good approach. The part that was most encouraging, well, actually, we'll get into the bench next. Let's talk first about the rotation. Now, no Naz Reid, but the first player off the bench for the Timberwolves was Dante DiVincenzo, and they sat Julius Randle and basically just went a little bit smaller with Gobert at the 5, and then I guess in that case, McDaniels at the 4, DiVincenzo and Conley on the floor together with Ant. And then after that, they sat Randle, and Rudy came back in, or excuse me, other way around. They sat Gobert and Randle came back in. So Randle was actually at the 5, and then Leonard Miller played the minutes that normally would go to Naz Reid. Just came in a little bit later in the first quarter. Remember, Miller didn't play for like 4 preseason games with the lacerated finger, 5 preseason games, and just came back earlier this week. So they obviously just wanted to get him some additional run. I wouldn't read too much into that other than, hey, Naz was out. They needed another body, and they wanted to get Miller some run. Also, just kind of see what he has, see how he could compete. I thought he played well. He had the worst plus minus on the team, but he was active and he was playing hard. And I don't see any issues really with how he played individually. I think it's a pretty good example of how single game individual player plus minus doesn't typically tell the full story. It never tells the full story, but it is typically super helpful. And then TJ Shannon and Rob Dillingham both played rotation minutes, both entered in the first quarter, actually. So maybe not surprising there. The Dillingham piece is perhaps notable, although then in the second half, the first kind of quote unquote backup point guard minutes, the player that came in when Conley went down was Jalen Clark, not Rob Dillingham. So I think that could more just be indicative of what Chris Finch is likely to do. It's going to depend on the matchup. This is preseason, so I don't think he was super concerned about the matchup piece of it. This was almost a demonstration, I think, of some nights it'll be Rob and some nights it'll be Jalen. It's just going to depend on a lot of different factors. And in this preseason dress rehearsal, if you will, he said, all right, first half it's Dillingham time, second half it's Clark time. And that's what happened. And TJ Shannon was the other guy who he's the 8th rotation guy. So treated the rotation similar to a regular season game. I do think we'll see the Wolves play a bit small as they've done, but I think that they're willing to do that with Jaden McDaniels at the 4, which you saw them do a little bit more of last year than they had previously under Chris Finch. So for whatever that's worth. But I think the Dillingham Clark piece is probably the biggest takeaway there. DiVincenzo played well. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. I want to talk about the bench unit overall actually next. And so we'll get into some of these guys individually and how they performed. And if there's anything else to read into as the game wore on, and then we'll close today with individual studs and duds. It's all coming here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Wayfair. The holidays are going to be here before you know it, which is exciting, but getting your home ready for guests and celebrations can feel like a lot. Maybe your serveware needs a refresh or the guest room could use new bedding. Wayfair has everything you need to get your home holiday ready, from Christmas trees and wreaths to bedding, cookware, and outdoor inflatables. It's your one-stop shop for every room in the house. Wayfair makes it easy to personalize your home for the holidays with a huge selection for every style and budget. And with free and easy delivery, even on the big stuff, you can get everything you need without the hassle of huge delivery fees. Wayfair is super easy to use. I know we love holiday seasonal decor at our house. There's a ton of things to choose from there. You can find whatever you want that will fit your style and budget. Everything's in one place. Checkout is always a breeze. And perhaps the best part is that delivery is always fast and free. It's an absolute lifesaver during a busy time of year. So instead of stressing about getting the house ready, you can actually enjoy the holidays with friends and family. Get organized, refreshed, and ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the bench. I thought the bench was a real bright spot, and that started in the first quarter. And really, it was the reason the Timberwolves had the lead at the end of the first quarter. Defensively, it wasn't as good. They played at really a frenetic pace, but that I think is what Chris Finch is looking for. Not the defense not being good part, but the pace. And not I know that. He said that multiple times about Rob Dillingham. And I thought he did a great job pushing the pace. He finished with 5 assists to only 1 turnover. And again, he was a minus 12. And part of that was the Bulls come back late in the game and some defensive issues overall by the defense or by the bench unit, I should say. But the actual passing and flow was much crisper with the second unit in the first quarter than it was with the first unit. It was like as soon as the second unit came in, the passes were flying around the perimeter. There was driving and cutting. There was pushing a pace. Like TJ Shannon checked in, and I think the first offensive possession, he pushes the ball to the rim, gets fouled, and hits an and one, missed the free throw, but generated an and one in transition. There was one time, I forget who it was on the Bulls took a charge. That's going to happen with TJ Shannon. But there was another time where they tried to take a charge and it was a block. And TJ Shannon, we'll call it bully ball on the open floor, is an effective strategy, and the Wolves love it from him. And that energy is contagious. He also, Shannon shot 2 of 5 from outside the arc. So he did squeeze the trigger on some threes. There were a couple pull-ups in transition, but the catch and shoot looked really strong, which is going to be important. And we're continuing to see initiator TJ Shannon. And I think we're going to see more. Like, he led the team in assists in this game. He had 7 assists to 3 turnovers. He did commit 5 fouls in 24 minutes, but the activity on the ball for TJ Shannon, generating offense for others, operating in pick and roll a little bit, pushing the pace in transition, and acting really more as a point forward because of his size. And I'll tell you, like, he is just a big dude for a wing, and for him to be able to initiate his size and at the threat that he is, because that's the other thing is the book is out on TJ Shannon. Like, people know he's trying to run you over in the open floor. He's trying to get to the rim, get fouled, and score. And so guys are backpedaling and giving ground because they know this is coming. Now, on the one hand, you're going to have opposing players stepping in to take charges, like what happened once in this game. That's going to be part of the strategy, but it's also a choice to do that. Like, not every team's got a guy that's going to do that, right? But you're more likely to have guys that do that against him than, say, that did it against Karl-Anthony Towns because of Towns' sheer size. But with TJ Shannon, guys are going to step in and take charges. But on the other hand, you're going to have people that don't want anything to do with that business, and they're going to be backpedaling and trying to protect the paint, kind of, sort of. But it's also going to open up passing lanes for Shannon because guys are going to expect him to go downhill, barreling toward the rim, and he's going to. But then TJ has to be able to say, all right, they're giving me ground. I can go to the rim and get fouled, or this is opening up passing lanes for me to kick it to the corner for a 3 or put on the brakes and hit a trailer for a 3. If he can make that, and I think we've seen signs of that going back to the Summer League game when I think he had a 9-assist Summer League performance, and then what we've seen so far this preseason, and then in this game against the Bulls was 7 assists in 24 minutes. If he's going to see the floor that well and make those decisions, that's a game changer for Minnesota. And it just feeds into the Timberwolves' obvious theory of, like, hey, we don't need a true point guard in name. We can have a bunch of big guys that are athletic and see the floor well and can shoot. And defenses have to defend against scoring at the rim. They have to defend the 3-point line on the ball, and they have to defend the 3-point line off the ball because TJ and, some of these other guys know what they're doing. Like, Rob's not big, but that's exactly the same mentality Rob Dillingham has, is I'm going to get to the rim. I mean, his is obviously score, and then pass. I would say Shannon's actually in a pretty similar mind frame. As long as these guys can make that secondary reactionary read and then ultimately execute the pass, that's huge. And That's an archetype that Minnesota's obviously gone after. Like, you could put Leonard Miller in that same category, obviously not a rotation guy, but that's, Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards, big guys that have a mindset of him getting to the rim, but can also stop and pull a three and have the ability and wherewithal to make the correct pass as the passing lanes open up in the open floor. And the fact that TJ Shannon's been able to do that is going to be significant for Minnesota moving forward. And he displayed that in this game. So for Shannon and Dillingham to combine for 12 assists and 4 turnovers is really, really nice. And again, early in the game, especially first quarter, the ball was snapping around the perimeter. The Timberwolves were getting good shots. They were missing a lot of shots. And some of it was easy stuff that the Bulls defense was just poor. But again, it's the ball movement. They didn't have to move the ball. They could have gone ISO ball consistently, but instead the ball was flying around the perimeter. And you saw, Dillingham drive and kick to the corner for an open three. You saw Dillingham turn the corner and score when the ball was kicked out to him off an offensive rebound and get a layup at the rim. A lot of pick and roll activity, but again, passing on the perimeter is probably the biggest thing that just was really good when it was that bench unit. And then when the starters came back in, we saw that kind of spill over to what the starters were doing. And ultimately the starters played well as the game wore on. Second quarter, third quarter especially was really good. The ball movement was significantly better. It just, the first quarter they looked completely ill prepared, and thankfully the Bulls were even worse. Hoping that obviously that doesn't carry over into the opener next Tuesday. I think it's next Tuesday. And but as the game wore on, it got better. And obviously it's preseason and it's the Bulls, and so they can mess around a little bit with it, but that can't be a consistent theme of like, we're going to come out of the gate really slow and figure it out as the game wears on. That to me would be, I guess, the concern there. Let's see, anything else so we talked about the second unit, having juice after the offense had a disjointed start. We talked about Jaden and Randle. A little bit about Ant. I mean, like, he played fine. He put up 25 points in 30 minutes, just took him 19 shots to do it. 3 of 7 on 3 is fine. He got a lot of open looks in the first quarter and a couple that were wide open that he just missed. It seems like there's a lot of Ant shots that are just rimming in and out. And maybe that's a function of not quite having your legs yet in the preseason, and that irons itself out in the next couple of weeks. And again, like, he was 9 of 19. So that's not a terrible shooting night. You'd like him to, like, I don't know, I guess it's really not that bad. 25 points and 19 shots isn't really bad at all. It felt like he was shooting a lot and missing a lot early in the game, but ultimately you look up and it's like, all right, he was 4 for 5 from the line. He was 3 for 7 from 3. He had 5 assists. That's not a bad night. And I thought he was active on the glass. He had 7 rebounds in this game, but just getting in there, tipping the ball around, like, he was playing pretty hard in this game. So it was overall a good Ant performance. It just seems the preseason so far, he's getting to his spots and he's squeezing the trigger, obviously more from the mid-range and from the post than we've seen from him in the past. And that's not all good. Like, it's been talked about a lot this offseason about adding the Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant back to the basket game to his bag. And that's important, and he should have it for those clutch late game situations. But we'll keep an eye on how often that's happening early in the season. It's not, unless you are Kevin Durant or Kobe. Even with Kobe, it wasn't a super efficient shot. Unless you're Kevin Durant or clutch Michael Jordan, like, that's not, you don't need to be going to that, right? The Ant pull up 3, the swing, get off the ball and get back to the ball for an open 3 catch and shoot. That's a better proposition for Anthony Edwards than a back to the basket force 2 in the middle of the shot clock instead of, a must have type, or you got to get rid of the ball situation, late shot clock, late game clock. So something to keep an eye on. We did see more of that in this game, and he made a couple too. Like, he's a good shooter. He's a good player. It's just not the most efficient way for him to get points. So something to keep an eye on. All right. We'll close today with talking studs and duds, put a bow on this, and talk briefly about what to expect tonight and into next week. As we peek ahead, we are very close to the start of actual real live regular season basketball. We'll talk about all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors over at FanDuel. The NFL season is into its 7th week, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 to get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Thursday Night Football, I was right about this. Talked about it the last couple of days. I said Bengals plus 5.5. And indeed, they actually won outright. They won by 2 over the Steelers on Thursday night. So, I guess come here for your FanDuel betting advice for NFL games. On Sunday, there's some interesting ones. Eagles at Vikings. Eagles are favored by 2.5 on the road in Minnesota. Of course, Philly's lost a couple in a row. Of course, the Vikings are, lately been struggling. So I don't know. I actually kind of like Eagles minus 2.5 on the road. I think they win that game by probably a touchdown, honestly. Packers Cardinals Sunday afternoon. It's late game. Packers favored by 6.5 at the Cardinals. The Cardinals have lost a lot of close games and also won some close games. I know that I don't know. I like Packers minus 6.5. I just feel like they're due for a good road win. They haven't had one yet this season. But maybe you want to bet outright. Maybe you want to look at a same game parlay, or you want to live bet the game. That makes it a ton of fun. Of course, primetime game Sunday night, Monday night. I always love the live betting of primetime games when there's only one game happening. You could choose to bet it however you want. Bet ahead, bet during the game, live, or same game parlays, whatever you'd like to do. If you're a casual fan, you love diving into the stats, FanDuel will make your game day experience so much better. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, let's close with studs and duds and peeking ahead toward the rest of the preseason. Studs in this game, Julius Randle. I said this off the top. I thought he was the best player on the floor in this game, at least for the Wolves, and probably overall too. Buzelis was good for the Bulls, but I think, and actually Giddey was pretty good too in his minutes. I'd probably say Julius Randle was still the best player on the floor. 23 points on 10 of 18 shooting, 2 of 5 from 3. I thought was a good decision maker, was appropriately aggressive early in this game. 8 rebounds in 27 minutes is a good number for Julius, tied for the team lead in rebounds, 4 assists, 3 turnovers, but again, appropriately aggressive, tied for the team lead with 2 steals. And he was the offense early. And that's kind of what Julius is like, hey, look, we're stuck. The ball's not moving. If it's not going to move, Julius is probably, next to Ant. He's the most effective ISO player on this team. Like, let's bully ball some guys. Let's get him some half-court secondary break opportunities where he's on the move. We feed him the ball, and he runs somebody over, gets through him, gets fouled. And also the point forward stuff. Like, Chris Finch wants Julius Randle initiating offense, and he obviously can do that. And this game was a pretty good sort of, mini sample of what Julius Randle can do. And again, just in 27 minutes, I thought he was very good in this game. Second most minutes played on the team still, because they spread it around here in the stress rehearsal game. But I don't know. I'm really encouraged by what, obviously the Thunder series did not go as expected, but Julius Randle's continuously looked better and better and better in a Timberwolves uniform as he becomes more comfortable, as Chris Finch continues to empower him to do several things, and they're going to need him to be great. If he's truly still the second best player in this team and they're trying to win a finals, like, Julius Randle has to not be a top 50 player. He's got to be a top 25 player, right? Like, there still has to be some progress here from Julius. We've talked about this before. I think, like, in terms of a leap, Ant could go from superstar to super duper star, right? From top 6 player to top 3 player. That's what lifts this team the most. But then there's also Jaden McDaniels having a leap. Julius Randle's not going to make a leap like that, but he's got to have the best season of his career. That's kind of hands down. That's what's got to happen. And if he plays like he did in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs last year, then that would be the best season of his career. So that's on the table. Certainly it's in there. I think he could do it. I think Chris Finch is the right coach for him. I think this is the right team around him to do it. But short of a Jaden McDaniels super leap, you need Julius Randle to have the best season of his career, and also Ant to do the super duper star thing if you're going to win a title. And this game was a pretty good, like, hey, Julius, it's in there. He can do this. Anthony Edwards also gets a stud. I thought he did play well. We just talked about him. 25, 7, and 5, was nearly 50% from the floor and from 3. Got 5 free throw attempts in 30 minutes. I thought he was also appropriately aggressive, minus a couple of those mid-range heaves in the half court. But overall, good performance from Anthony Edwards. Third stud, I didn't really talk about Dante. I can't really give him one. He didn't play enough or do enough of this game. We'll talk about him here in a second as we close. I guess I'd go TJ Shannon. I thought TJ was very good. 14 points and 12 shots, 2 of 5 on 3, got to the line 4 times, 7 assists to 3 turnovers. He did have 3 boards and 2 steals in this game. I thought he looked good defensively, and that's going to be key for him. We've talked a lot about this in the preseason, that TJ should from day one be as effective or better than Nickeil Alexander-Walker offensively. The question is going to be, can he be as good on the ball as Nickeil? Can he pass as good as Nickeil? And so far, like, it certainly wouldn't be fair to say he's as good of an individual defender as Nickeil Alexander-Walker at this moment, but he's shown signs that he could be there. He could get there. He's more physical than Nickeil. He's bigger overall. in terms of his frame than Alexander Walker. And the passing piece, like, it looks every bit as good, if not better, than Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And the stuff we talked about in the first segment about his aggressiveness and ability to create passing lanes by being as good as he is and as dynamic as he is, getting downhill, both in the half court and especially in transition. Like, teams were not afraid of Nickeil Alexander-Walker in the open floor. They will be of TJ Shannon, because he will run you over, or he'll dunk on you, or he'll pass it to somebody who's going to make a three, or dunk on somebody else. Nickeil didn't have that same dynamism in the open floor, if you will. Like, that's not something teams were afraid of when it came to Alexander Walker. So I thought this game was a good example of everything TJ Shannon can do. 14, 7, and 3 in this game. So TJ, Anthony Edwards, and Julius Randle are my studs in this game. I mentioned Rudy earlier. I thought he played well. I don't think he was super dominant defensively, but he did have a couple of nice plays. We talked about the 16 and 8 from him, 16 on 12 shots. Typical Rudy efficiency, the volume was higher than typical in 26 minutes because it seemed like the Wolves were making a concerted effort to get the ball to him. DiVincenzo, I thought, played really well. Only 18 minutes, 9 points on 4 of 8 shooting. But he came in and had a nice bucket right away off an inbounds play, and he had a couple of nice passes as well. He had no assists, but I thought he moved the ball well in the half court. Head passes, etc. They need him to be good, obviously. And I think I put him in a similar boat, albeit less high stakes than Julius Randle, where he's become more and more comfortable with his time over the course of his time in Minnesota. Remember, he's not even been in Minnesota for 13 months, and he's still kind of searching for what he was in with the Knicks. And I don't think he'll be that same player. He's going to play less point guard than he did with the Knicks. He's going to he's not going to be a starter like he was with the Knicks. But if he can get a little bit back to the Golden State Warriors version of himself, which he showed flashes of second half of the season last year, I think that would be super helpful for this team. I don't actually really have any duds in this game. Like, Miller, the line looks kind of meh, but I thought he played fine. Berenger played fourth quarter minutes only, 4.7 rebounds, active. I thought actually played very well. Had a couple wonderful defensive plays, one credit with one block, but affected additional shots, as Rudy tends to do. Bones Highland was fine in his minutes. Jalen Clark didn't put anything up in 15 minutes of second half play, a little bit in the third quarter, and then I think the full fourth quarter. He played great defensively, as he typically does. He had like a couple of lockdown possessions immediately when he came in the game. Didn't even get a shot up in 15 minutes, and that's going to be kind of the story for Jalen Clark. He's just going to have to hit when the ball swings to him when he's on the floor. And I think he'll be in and out of the rotation depending on opponent, situation, etc. But he will see some semi-regular minutes. It just he's going to share that ninth spot, likely with Rob Dillingham, as TJ, Nas, Reid, and Dante DiVincenzo lock down the first 3 bench spots. All right. Next, Minnesota does play tonight. We're not going to do a post-game pod on a Friday night for this preseason finale against the Sixers, but we'll talk about it a bit on Monday's show. However, we've only got 2 shows left before the season kicks off for Minnesota. I'm sorry, they actually open on Wednesday next week. I had in my head Tuesday. So we got 3 shows. We got Monday, so we'll talk a bit about the Sixers game, and then we'll spend the rest of the show Monday, and then the Tuesday and Wednesday shows previewing the season. Might do a couple key player previews, but it's really going to be more about my predictions for the season, where I think the Wolves will land wins-wise. And we'll get you ready for next week. And obviously next Wednesday, we'll do a preview of Wolves, Blazers. I think Portland's a really intriguing team this year. They finished the year extremely well last year under Chauncey Billups, and they added some pieces. They're going to be maybe a fringe play-in team in the Western Conference, but that'll be an interesting one to preview. So we'll do that next week. Get you ready for Wolves, Blazers next Wednesday night. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder for your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast in the world, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This show is also part of that very same Locked On Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. We'll catch you next time.